Okay, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to tackle something huge, the U.S. national debt. I know, it's a staggering topic, but we're not just going to stare at the problem. We're going to explore a potential solution that some are calling a real game changer, all based on a recent market analysis. So the big question is, could bringing manufacturing back home actually be the answer? Let's start with a number that is, well, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. $1 trillion. For the very first time in history, this is what the U.S. is paying every single year just in interest on its debt. That's not even paying down the principal, that's just the fee for borrowing. What a truly mind-boggling milestone.
So to really get what that trillion-dollar interest payment even means, we've got to zoom out and look at the whole picture.
And yep, there it is. That $1 trillion in interest, it's being generated by this number, $38 trillion. That's the total U.S. federal debt. This is the financial mountain we're talking about.
And look, this timeline shows this isn't some new problem that just popped up overnight. The U.S. hasn't actually balanced a budget in 25 years. And if you just follow the numbers here, you can see that for 6 years in a row, the annual deficit has blown past $1 trillion. And the projection for 2025, it's expected to hit $1.8 trillion. The trend is not great.
All right, so what's the game plan? What are we actually doing about all this? Let's break down the current economic strategy as laid out in the analysis we're examining today.
The strategy basically boils down to two big ideas. On one side, you've got major tax cuts. The thinking here is that this will spark faster economic growth, which means more people and businesses are making money, and that expands the tax base. Then, on the other side, you have new tariffs on goods coming into the country, which are supposed to create a brand new revenue stream for the government. Now, on paper, that sounds kind of logical, right? But here's the multi-trillion-dollar question. Is this actually going to be enough? To figure that out, we have to see what the independent folks are saying. We have to ask, does the math actually add up? And wow, this is where the plot really thickens. According to the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office and other analysts, the current plan could do the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do. Their projection, that it will likely add several more $1 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. This chart right here just lays it all out so clearly. Look at the bar on the left. That's the massive $1.8 trillion deficit projected for 2025. Now look at the tiny little bar next to it for the money coming in from tariffs, just $240 billion. You can see the enormous gap. It shows why critics are saying this plan, all by itself, doesn't even come close to plugging the hole.
So if the current strategy has a major shortfall, what's the alternative? Well, this is where the analysis we're looking at proposes what it calls a potential game changer, reshoring, which is just a fancy way of saying bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States. So here's the core idea, plain and simple. Generate up to 1 million new, high-quality manufacturing jobs right here in the U.S. The argument is that this would create a powerful new engine for tax revenue, one that could totally change the debt equation.
And to really get why they're calling this a revival, you just have to look at this chart. You can see the steady, long-term decline in American manufacturing jobs, a lot of it driven by offshoring production. There was a really steep drop after the year 2000. The idea here is to completely reverse that trend. And hey, this isn't just wishful thinking. There's already a framework being built to make this happen. Big pieces of legislation like the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act are using all sorts of financial incentives, things like tax credits and letting companies write off their equipment costs way faster to make it a lot more attractive to build factories right here in America.
Okay, so this is where it gets really fascinating. How does this actually work? Well, the core of the argument is that one new manufacturing job is never just one job. It creates this powerful economic ripple effect that spreads through the entire community.
That ripple effect? It actually has a name, the economic multiplier effect. It's a super important idea that basically measures how one initial investment, like building a new factory, doesn't just create value itself, it kicks off a much larger wave of economic activity all around it.
Let's walk through how this plays out in the real world. So it starts with one new manufacturing job. That worker takes their paycheck and spends it at local stores, coffee shops, and restaurants. That new spending creates more demand, which leads to jobs in things like housing, construction, and transportation. And the final result is just incredible. For every one manufacturing job, the analysis says another 4.8 jobs are created somewhere else in the economy. That is one of the biggest multipliers of any industry.
And it's not just about the number of jobs, it's about the sheer power of every single dollar. According to the National Association of Manufacturers, for every $1 spent in manufacturing, it actually generates another $2.65 in the broader U.S. economy. I mean, talk about a huge bang for your buck.
And we are not talking about low-wage jobs here. These are high-quality, really well-paying careers. In 2024, the average manufacturing worker in the U.S. earned over $106,000 when you include pay and benefits. These are the kinds of jobs that support families, that fuel consumer spending, and of course generate a ton of tax revenue.
But, and this is really, really important, you have to get that old image of a dusty, old-school factory out of your head. This whole idea is about building America's future by completely reimagining what manufacturing even is in the 21st century.
You know, when a lot of us hear the word manufacturing, we probably picture something like that old-school repetitive assembly line. But the future of this sector looks completely different. We're talking about high-tech roles, about people collaborating with incredibly advanced machines, and a deep, deep focus on innovation and R&D.
And to prove this isn't just some buzzword, look at this number. In 2023 alone, U.S. manufacturers invested over $404 billion into research and development. This sector is the absolute engine of American innovation, spending more on R&D than any other part of the private sector.
So the author of this analysis, Louis Navellier, he sums it all up with this really powerful call to action. He says that after we've all seen just how fragile global supply chains can be, it's squarely in America's national and economic interest to just build, baby, build.
And that really brings us to the big final question we're left with. We've seen the incredible scale of the debt, the potential problems with the current plan, and the really powerful economic case for advanced manufacturing. So, is reviving this innovative high-tech sector the ultimate key to not just solving America's debt crisis, but securing its entire economic future? That is the multi-trillion-dollar question to think about.